Today we wanted to do something a little bit different, and it feels a little different, doesn't it? Feels a little different, feels a little strange, feels a little bit kind of different because we're doing church while having breakfast, right? How dare us? It's crazy. But here's the thing. Here's the thing is it really actually shouldn't feel that much different. It really shouldn't feel that much different because what this is community. It's community around the tables. And this is actually what the first disciples of Jesus, this is what the first churches did. Was they came around the table and they talked about Jesus and they talked about lives and they grew in a community together. Today, we kind of have this impression. We have this impression that we go to church, and when you go to church, you have to do everything the same. When you show up at church, then there has to be 3 songs. Always 3 songs, right? So 3 songs. Then you have a host moment. The host moment, he's going to tell you all the great stuff that you need to get involved in and do, which is great and awesome. And then you have a message where the pastor talks way too long. So then you end up having that message, and then you go from that. There was a couple people applauding to that. Hurtful. So, but now all of a sudden, then we go into another worship song, and then we close and we say, okay, goodbye, and we'll see you later. But that's the system of church. Like, that's the church that we often grew up in and what we do, and that's the system, the program of church. But in the early church, it's not what they did. In fact, this whole design of stage up front and doing things that way, it's actually a fairly new design. It's a fairly new thing in church history. The first churches didn't start out that way. There wasn't a stage up front. In fact, it was in the middle. They didn't do those things that way. In fact, they came around meals and they talked about Jesus. Oftentimes today in churches, we make the meal kind of an afterthought, don't we? Where we say, okay, let's have lunch together after church because we want to keep you there. After I get to have 50-minute message, which breakfast took too long. So I promise that we aren't going to have a 50-minute message today. You can applaud for that. Okay, that was okay. Yeah. So it shouldn't actually feel that different. But some way it kind of does, right? Kind of does. I'll tell you guys, we've been talking about a vision plan and a vision forward for FCC and where we want to go and where we want to see our community. And I've been praying about this all week, and I've been thinking about this all week. And I'll tell you this, I actually had about 6 different messages and 6 different sermons that were written. And today I decided, you know what, we're just not going to do any of those. I'm just going to talk to you from the heart. Because I think right now we just need to have a heart time. We need to have a heart message. And we need to talk about where we are, where the community is, and what we can do. Because I'll tell you this, our community is suffering. Our community around us is suffering. Not just in FCC, not just in other churches, not just in all the churches. Our community around us is really suffering. I'm one of those left brain kind of guys. I like statistics. I like math and all that stuff. I can't do math. I just like it when it's done for me. But I'm one of those guys that loves those kind of statistics. And here's one that I wanted to just share with you guys. Right now in Port Orchard, we're 90% unchurched. It's 90%. 90% unchurched. And all the churches that we have here in Port Orchard, 90% of people will not come to church. Why? That's crazy to me. Especially when we see that there's a ton of people that are out there. We saw it this last Tuesday. How many of you all were at the trunk or treat? Trunk or treat was incredible. It was amazing to see. And I'll tell you guys this, as a pastor, I will tell you, I'm always at odds a little bit with trunk or treat. I'm always at odds a little bit with it because I look at it and go, is it really effective? Are we actually reaching people? But here's one of the things that we saw on Tuesday. Over 1,500 people showed up. And most of those people have never been to church. And they won't go to church. In fact, a ton of those people came over from the apartments just across the street, walked over, and they said, I didn't even know this was a church. I'm like, your bedroom window faces a sign. It's right there. But here's the thing, is a ton of people step foot on church property for the very first time. And not just this church property, but any church property for the first time in their lives on Tuesday. There were some interesting conversations that happened with that. Not just the give me candy, please. But there was interesting conversations. There was one conversation I wanted to tell you about because this is where our community is at. This is the people in our community and people I've been talking to for months and trying to get to know. There was one lady at Trunk or Treat. She comes up to me and she says, hey, do you have a bathroom for my son to use? Because he needs to go to the bathroom really bad. And I said, yeah, of course. It's right there in the building. We have the doors open. There's a sign there and I can show you where it is if you'd like. She looked back at me. She says, I can't go in there. I said, why? She says, well, because we're not church people. We're not church people and we don't belong to the church and that's just kind of weird. And then she also confessed, and I'm pretty sure if I step through the doors, then all of a sudden I'm going to burst out into flames. Said that is a possibility. Are you willing to risk it for your son? No. I told her, look, Look, here's the deal is I promise nothing's going to happen to you when you walk through those doors, except for your son is going to be really grateful to void his bladder. And he's probably going to complain less, which will be awesome. But it opened up the door for us to have greater communication. And the greater communication is she and I were talking, and we were talking about what the church is and everything. She had this misconception of what the church is. The church is the building. The church is the building, and it's just these walls. And these walls are so sacred that if you come through and you're a sinner, you're going to catch on fire. It was the impression, but that's the impression of a lot of people. That's the impression that we often sometimes give off, and that people have this impression of the building. Told her that wasn't going to happen. The other thing that I noticed about this woman, though, was that was amazing. It was an amazing reflection on her part. To think about this. If you think that you're going to burst through those doors and catch on fire, then what does that say about you? It means that you probably know that you're a sinner. That you already know that you're a sinner, that there's a need for you to change, yet I don't want to walk through those doors because I might burst into flame. That meant there was a need. Here's the other thing I saw on Tuesday. I saw people needing community. I saw people that were needing community, and they needed community so bad. And they were looking in the wrong places. They're looking in the wrong things. And our community right now, they are looking in the wrong places. They are looking in the wrong things because we are a communal people. We always want to find community. And if we don't find community in something of Jesus and of church and of gathering together, if we don't find community, we find community in some other way. We'll find community in politics. We'll find community in our neighbors. We'll find community in social media. We find community in anything and everything else. But we are a communal people, and we need to have community. And we saw that on Tuesday. Over 1,500 people coming, needing community. Yet, in our community, we're 90% unchurched. It makes us one of the highest in the nation. We're number one. It's the problem. It's a problem. And it's not just here. It's not just Port Orchard. It's actually throughout the whole country. Right now, throughout the whole country, there's been article after article that talk about how the church is suffering, how the churches are going down, how new generations, how millennial generations, how Generation Z, how all of these generations are no longer coming to the church to find community, how they are no longer accepting the church, how they say, look, the church is becoming a problem, that there's an issue with the church, and there's people that just aren't coming. The latest article I just read on it, it actually put it as 7 in 10 adult people right now have rejected the church and say, we will not come. And that's in the United States. We're higher here in Kitsap. It's crazy. It's unfathomable to me. You know, I kept reading through the Bible all throughout the week, and there's this verse that just kept sticking out to me. And I kept thinking about it and kept praying about it. And I will tell you, as I ended up writing these 6 sermons that I'm not using today, there was like 6 different approaches in talking about this because it's so versatile. But I think it talks about the argument and the things that are going on today. And it's actually in Luke in chapter 5. In Luke chapter 5, verse 30 through 31, if you wanted to check it out later on. This is where the Sadducees and the Pharisees, the leaders of the church, they come up to Jesus and they say, Jesus, why would you be eating with sinners and tax collectors? See, in that culture, they decided, sinners and tax collectors, they were kind of the same, except for tax collectors. They mentioned them specifically because they're worse than sinners. They're sinners that we have to pay money to. So they were specifically mentioned. But they said, Jesus, why would you eat with people? And in that culture, there was a divide. There was a divide between the church, between church people and people coming to church, and then the sinners who said, well, look, I can't go to church. They won't let me go to church. I'm not going to be at church, and I don't feel like I'm going to go to church. I might burst into flames or something like that. And so there was a divide between the church and the church people and then the sinners and the tax collectors. There's still a divide today amongst tax collectors, but not so much sinners. I will tell you this. There was a divide, and Jesus answered that divide, and he tells the religious leaders, it's the sick that need a doctor. That it's the sick that need the doctor. Well, I'll tell you, in our community, we have a lot of sick, and we have a lot of need for a doctor. I'll tell you, I'm speaking to the heart from you guys today because I'm seeing it everywhere. I see it everywhere. I see it in the schools. I see it everywhere in the grocery stores. I see it at Costco. I see it everywhere that we go. The need for Jesus and the need for community and something different. And the more that I look out and I see this great need and I see these churches, and there's a ton of churches that are doing great things. I'm not saying that they're not, but I also see that there's a revolving door around them. There's a revolving door, and then the ones that don't have a revolving door, oftentimes they also struggle in just even bringing new people because the people of Port Orchard have said we don't want church. We're 90% unchurched. What do we do about it? Well, I'll tell you, I've been praying about this for months and months and months. It's been on my heart. And as I see it because of my kids and my kids' friends, I started to think about it and I'm going, wow, how do we have a church that my kids and my kids' friends want to come to? I started seeing my neighbors. And when we had a dog that was lost in our neighborhood, me and my son, we went around the neighborhood and we were trying to figure out where the dog was. And now I've had conversations with my neighbors. I've had conversations with a ton of them, and I've invited them to church. They won't come to church. But when I ended up taking the dog door to door, I saw on almost every single door, this house is blessed. And I saw Bible verses on doors. This house is protected by Jesus, yet none of them will come to church. Why? I started thinking, what do we do? How do we actually reach millennials? How do we reach the next generations? How do we create a space and how do we create something that makes it so it's open for everybody and people want to actually come in and be a part of this? And the thing that I keep coming back to, and as I prayed about it and I brought it to the elders, and then we've been praying about it and discussing it and going through it, and the thing I keep coming back to is, what if we weren't doing church? Now, I know that's scary for a second, and let me explain. What if instead of us focusing and saying we're doing church as we always do church, what if instead we were a community that did community? What if we're a community that does community, that welcomes community in, that does community like eating around the tables? And says, let's actually go back to what the first disciples were doing. Let's actually celebrate community and bring community in. I had conversation after conversation with young adults and millennials and people that are unchurched and people that are churched. And here's the thing, is from people that are churched and unchurched, they have the same impression. They have some of the same impressions. They say this, that look, I can go to almost any church around here, and I haven't been to church since I was a kid, but yet I know when I show up, there's going to be 3 songs, there's going to be a message, there's going to be a concluding song, and I'm going to be good for the week. I don't have to go or do anything else. Well, what if we change that dynamic? We said, no, we're not focused on just doing this on Sundays. We're focused on community and becoming a community that our community wants to be a part of. Because here's the thing that I know from conversations that I've had with people over and over and over again. They are not rejecting the gospel. They are not rejecting Jesus. And they all want community. So what if we have a community and we say we're going to be about community that loves people, that welcomes them in, that's willing to eat with them like Jesus was willing to eat with them, that we open up and we say, look, we're a community for community. And we start changing some of the dynamic. So how do we do that? Sounds good, right? Sounds good all of a sudden to have this, but it sounds a lot harder in practice, doesn't it? Well, that's why we have this thing that we've been developing over the last month and a half or so called the Moonshot Plan. Moonshot Plan with a cool little moonshot graphic. The moonshot graphic is there so that way you all will read the 9 pages that it includes. Single spaced. There we go. But here's the thing. We need to have a plan. We need to have a plan forward. We need to look at the community and say, okay, what is it that the community is actually needing? And what are we needing as a community of Jesus followers? What do we need? Not just what does the community need? What do we need to do? And I think we have a plan to move forward, and a plan to direct, a plan to say, okay, this is how we can actually answer the call to the community that is desperately right now saying, we need a community and we know we need Jesus. Right now, there's more and more people than ever. When I had conversations over the last couple months with people that are unchurched, they don't reject the fact that they're sinners. They go, look, I know I'm wrong. I'm probably going to burn into flames if I walk into church. They know that they're sinners. They know they need a community. They're just not finding it in the ways that we've been doing things. So what if we switched up some of those ways? And that's what I want to present to you today. It's what a moonshot vision looks like. Now, I'm going to tell you guys this. I'm going to tell you this. First off, I'm not going to be able to cover everything that's in here in this short little message because, we have time and we do need to end at a certain time. Here's the thing, though, is if you have time to stay after church, so about 5 minutes after church today, then we're also going to have a questions and answers session. So please feel free to stay, answer, or get your answers and also questions and all of that. Get everything in. We're going to have a question and answer session. You're welcome to stay and hear more about it. The other thing is this Moonshot Vision is actually in the back right over there. It's also in the back in the lobby there. You can take it home and read through it. And I invite you, read through it, pray through it, look through every nook and cranny of it, text me, email me, ask me questions, all of that stuff. Talk to the elders, talk to people. We want to listen. We want to hear you. But here's the things that I wanted to share with you, and just a couple little snapshots, of what it is that we're wanting to do. So some of the things are going to be in this, and I wrote a few things down just to give you some of the snapshots. Again, this is not the whole thing. Some of the snapshots are this. Number one is, what if we changed up Sunday gatherings a little bit? What if we changed up Sunday gatherings here at FCC just a little bit? First off, we can work on the look. See, right now, our area right here looks a little bit older and dated compared to the other areas that were just renovated. So let's get new carpet, right? Let's get new carpet. We can also paint the ceiling. That would be awesome. That would be really good. So some of the look, let's update some of those things. But the other thing is, what if we did Sundays just a little bit different? One of the ideas that we've been playing around with is this is eventually to build sort of a circle stage, something that goes out in the middle. And here's the thing, is a circle stage is actually how the first disciples did it. Circle stage. When you had a synagogue, when you were in the synagogues and you were in the synagogues and the temples, you actually were in the middle. You weren't up front. See, up front actually makes us as a culture feel like all authority is up front. But in those old days, what you did was you were actually in the middle and you were communicating around the room of people that can see each other, be with each other, and it kept the word in the center. Kept God in the center and saying, we're going to make God our center. We're going to make the word the center. And it did something else. It made it so that way the people could see each other. Right now in our church culture, it's really easy to go into any church, show up late, sit in the back, never ever talk to anybody, escape as fast as you can. How many of you have done that? I've done that too in the weird churches, not this church, okay? But here's the thing. We've all done that at some point. But the problem is in our culture right now, our culture actually says that this is the culture that is the most unseen and unheard, the most rejected. They feel the most rejected by people around. And we have a culture of people that are saying, look, I don't want to see people. I can't see people. Well, what if on Sundays we said, no, we're going to sit around and we're going to actually communicate and do these things in a circle or in a way. So you had to see people on Sundays. It's uncomfortable, I know. But I will tell you this. There's a whole lot of people in our community that would love it because at least they feel seen. And they may not come up and say hi right away, but if you see each other from across the room enough times, eventually somebody's going to say, hey, what's your name? Or make it even more awkward. What's your favorite color? Go Buddy the Elf. But here's the thing. We can do that. So having a circle stage, and it would be kind of a half show, so that way we can sometimes put it up in the back, we can put it in the corners, we can move it around, and we can do different things. The other thing that we're talking about doing is on Sundays, some Sundays doing this. And I'd like to do at least once a month where we're having a meal together, and that's part of church. That it isn't an afterthought. It's actually part of the gathering. It's part of us actually doing stuff together and community together. And it's a great idea in that we can, instead of inviting people, hey, please come to church, you can say, would you like to have breakfast? And it's awesome breakfast, by the way. We can do that. So switching up some of the Sundays. On the other things that we would like to do is switch up some of the other Sundays, and we'll do different things. It doesn't mean we're never going to do church the way that we've been doing church. We will do that on some of those Sundays. But on other Sundays, we'll also have a shorter message. We'll have a shorter message and kind of a different cycle of worship, and we'll tell everybody before we do this, and we'll advertise and do these things. But on those Sundays, we can also do an activity right after the message. So that way we're actually using what we're talking about instead of go home and do this. Let's do this right now. Let's talk together right now. Let's do something practical right now and develop a community together. Another thing that we're talking about is also shutting down the church on certain weekends of the year, 3 to start. And instead of doing church here, let's go do church over at Coffee Oasis Let's do community somewhere else. Let's do community by saying, hey, instead of doing just church right here and doing this, what if we also just filled up backpacks for kids? What if we did something that's practical? Instead of saying we're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus, let's go do it. And let's do it on a Sunday so we can all be a part of it. Let's do something. Do something and show the community. Because right now, there's tons and tons of people out there that say, look, we don't see the difference that it makes going to church. Right now, I can believe in Jesus, I can stay home, but we don't see there's a difference. And here's the thing is we need to have that difference, and that difference is community. And that's what Jesus understood. When Jesus was talking to the disciples and eating with people, and I will tell you this, in the book of Luke, Jesus was always at a meal, going to a meal, or coming from a meal, right? It wasn't because he was always hungry. Well, he probably was a little bit hungry. But it was always because we knew that was where community is. Well, let's create community and instead of a church that does church, let's be a community that fosters community, that does community together and says we're willing to change up Sundays a little bit so that we can do more community and invite people in different ways, invite them into our inner circle, to our eating club at our table, invite people in together. That's just part of it. That's part of the things that we've been talking about. Something else that we've also been talking about is this. What if we changed up media and we changed up the approach that we have sometimes in going to our community? Right now, since COVID, I will tell you this. Since COVID, if you look at the statistics before COVID, social media use is kind of like right down here, right? After COVID, all of a sudden it shot up on a bar graph way up here, and it hasn't gone down. In fact, it's actually increased in 2023. The numbers of people that are going on their phones, that are scanning things. Well, what if we had media that was specifically tied to our community and also towards getting to know Jesus and furthering their love of Jesus and also answering questions and being together with us? What if we had media stuff that we can actually approach our community with? We want to do that by making some podcasts. In fact, we have those 2 rooms back there. One of those rooms, we want to soundproof it. And we want to put in some podcast microphones. We want to have elders doing podcasts on different books of the Bible and different things that we can reach. And we also want to have community podcasts and things that we can actually reach our community. How many of you all do podcasts or have done podcasts? This is totally not your crowd, I tell you. That's it. But I will tell you, that's one of the ways that we're reaching millennials. Millennials are actually using podcasts more than ever. They're willing to trust podcasts. And before they'll ever come to church, they will look at a podcast. So we want to look at podcasts. Also, social media use. How many of you all have ever done reels? Gone on YouTube, gone on Facebook, on Instagram, any of those, right? Yeah, absolutely. All the young people in the back, raise their hands. Here's the thing, is doing reels and being able to do that. We want to take that other room. We're going to put in some cameras and we're going to have ways of actually making reels and media and different things that help to the community to know who we are. So we want to change up how we do some media. We want to change up how we do some things. And it won't be just me. In fact, I'm insisting it's not going to be me. I want the elders to be in this and saying, hey, we're going to do some reels. We're going to do some podcasts. We're going to do some different things. And if you have a great idea and you have something that you're saying, man, the community needs to hear this, let's do it. Let's change it up. On Sundays, those rooms will also be available. We'll have a communion and prayer room. We'll also have a private room for reflection and things like that we can use on Sundays. But these are all things that we can do and use throughout the week. So what if we change up media and we talk about that? It's all inside this plan. By the way, I'm not going to do it justice and hitting all the points today. Read that plan. Check it all out. The next thing we need to do, though, is grouping together. Here's the thing, is the church spread in the early church. Right now, we have a community that is very much like the early church. The early church started out very small. Nobody knew about them. You know how people started to hear about them? They didn't invite them into church. They invited them into community. And they said, come and be with us. Come and be with us in groups. We need to have groups, home groups that are all over the place. And instead of them being groups and just Bible study groups, we want them to be life groups. Look, when you get involved in a group, it's not just come to my house and let's just discuss the Bible and then leave and then you never do anything with it. No, let's discuss Jesus and let's actually foster community. When you're in this group, we're making a commitment and saying, let's do life together. Let's actually do things together. Let's just not have just a Bible study group. Let's talk about Jesus. We need to talk about Jesus. Let's talk about the gospel. We need to do that, but let's have meals together. Let's do community together. Let's grow together. Let's have life groups together where our kids can be fostered by each other. Where our kids and our families, they grow together. And instead of actually being apart and we just show up at a group, no. We're actually family together. Our homes become Olive Garden. when you're here, your family. Let's do that. Let's do life groups together, and we're going to do things to foster that and to grow that. The other thing that we want to do is after Sundays, always have something that we're going to do here. Always having something on pretty much every Sunday after church or after gathering. What we want to do is have something that we're going to do that'll just be community oriented, that'll be you oriented. There'll always be something, whether it's a meal, whether it's let's watch a football game together. How many of you all would like watching a football game together? Sweet. Well, the Kansas doesn't count. So, but yeah. But what if we actually had a way to watch football together because we love him? We'll even watch Kansas. Like, you don't do that. But we could watch football together. Or what if we had like a Christmas movie and said, you know what? It's Christmas time. After church, we're going to watch a movie this Christmas. What if we came together and we fostered community after church and even before church? And instead of just, hey, let's go to church and then let's leave. No, we've got something for you to do almost every Sunday. And at least once a month, we want to do an answer to questions where anybody from the community can come in and ask any question they have about God, about Jesus, about the gospel, about anything that they want. We want to answer those questions because right now we have a culture that is asking a ton of questions and they feel like they haven't gotten answers or ability to get answers. Let's answer questions once a month. Doing that at least. We've actually already talked about what our first answer to question session might be, which would be this month, which would be really cool. And we're bantering around some ideas, but part of it might be really great to talk about Israel, the stuff that's going on, and then answering questions and having answers and talking about the things that are happening. Let's do that. Let's be part of the community and grow the community in those ways. The next thing that we want to do is youth. We need youth for the kingdom to grow, for the churches to grow, for the people in our community to get to know who Jesus is. We need a youth group. We need a youth group that is going to be built up of disciples in a discipleship model where we're discipling youth, and it will be purposely small to medium size, saying, look, we want to actually grow these teenagers and know who Jesus is and how to talk about Jesus. In order to do that, we need a youth pastor, though. We need a youth pastor, and we need volunteers, and we need people to get involved in it. Read it, check it out in the plan, but we need a youth. We need youth to be here. I will tell you this. I'm going to give you guys just the broad scope and the long plan real quick before I jump off here. But the broad strokes, what we're wanting to do is this. We want to become a community that builds community. Because that's what the people in our town are looking for. The statistics have been going the wrong way. Well, what if we can build a community that says we love community, we want to do community together, we want to do this. And the big plan, the big idea that comes, and this is the 5-year plan, the 3-year plan, the 2-year plan, all of that. But what it does is what we're saying is this. We want to go ahead and we want to build this thing up to which we're able to build it up eventually to 2 gatherings. And then after 2 gatherings start to get filled, instead of building on a 3rd or 4th or anything like that, what if we started planting more churches? More churches that were connected with the like-mindedness, where we could actually be connected throughout the community and churches working together. What if we built more churches? Ron Bamey was actually telling me a statistic. He was telling me that 30 years ago, there was 45 churches here in Port Orchard. Right now, there's about 20. What if all of a sudden we said, you know what, our focus is going to be, we got to build more churches here of like-minded people who are saying, let's do community. And building that together. That's the long-term plan. But in order for us to get any of this and to do any of this and to do this, it's going to take a lot of things. It's going to be hard, first off. It's not going to be easy. Some people will look and they'll go, well, wait a minute, we're so used to, we want to show up and we want to just do this and so forth. We're needing to take off. But we need people to get behind it. We need people to say, no, I want to go after my community because I see the problem. I see what's going on. I see that the community is on fire, and the community is on fire, except for yesterday when the monsoon came. But the fire is still even throughout our hearts. Our community is on fire. Our community is struggling. We know the answer. It's Jesus. But we have to bring community in order to show them. And we have to go out in the community and be the hands and feet of Jesus in order to show them what it is. In order for us to do this, then we're asking for 3 things. And as the worship team comes and as we start to conclude and worship, we need 3 things from each and every one of you. And I want you all, again, read these plans. Take them out. They're in the lobby there. They're in the back. But we need 3 things. Number 1 is giving. It's going to take money to be able to do some of this stuff. That's just a church thing. Churches, we need money to be able to do this. And so if God is placing it on your heart to give towards this, then please do so. Give towards this. The numbers are inside the Moonshot plan. In order to increase the use and ability and do all the things that we're looking for, it's about $20,000. For a youth pastor, it's $30,000 for the whole year. So we're looking at this as part-time. So we're looking to be able to fund that. The other thing that we need is we need people to serve. We need people to be behind it and saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to be one of those people that I love food, so I'm going to cook food. I'm going to do that. Or, you know what? I love this part in the community. I love just talking to people and going out and giving people hugs. Awesome. Let's put you out front. The hug station. I see you. Let's put you out there. We need people to serve and to get behind it. We need people to actually grow and serve in that way. Jesus calls us to serve. He says, you're all part of the same body. We're all part of the same body. We have different parts in it. And there's things that we need people to do within the church and to serve, but it's not limited to that. I want you to know that. It's not limited to that. If God is placing something on your heart and you're like, man, I think I should be able to do this. I think I should do this. Then let's do that because we want to switch our culture from no culture to yes culture. Yes. And how do we do this? How do we use your giftings that God has given you so that way we can go out in the community? We need that. We need people to serve, and we need people to pray. We need people to pray for the church, to pray for the community, to pray for the people that are going to be coming in. We need people to pray. We're going to have certain prayer nights and prayer days where people can come in and pray, but we invite you all to pray at home and pray about this vision, pray about the community, pray about Port Orchard. We need people to be praying. Prayer is what starts movements. Let's be praying for that movement to start. Let's be praying together. Here's the thing. I look out into the world right now and I see the world. And I see with the conversations that I've been having with person after person after person out here in Port Orchard. And I will tell you, I feel like Port Orchard's on fire. But we know who has a fire hose. It's Jesus. And I will tell you, I think that FCC can be one of those answers. Can be the answer to helping the community and growing a community with community. I think that we are actually in a perfect position because we're small enough and nimble enough to be able to change and to be able to grow in that community and to do something different. To do something different within our community. And I believe in the capacity of each and every one of you, that a lot of you are sitting there and you've probably already heard Jesus gnawing at your heart already and saying, hey, I need to get involved. I need to do something. Well, let's do that. Let's activate it because our community needs you. Our community needs you. We want to build a place for your kids, for my kids, for their friends. We want to build a place for our neighbors, for our family, and the people all around us. Let's do that together.